How's it going, brother?
I'm doing well, man. Glad to be here.
Yes, I appreciate it. Oh, it's an honor for you to sit down with me. Read a lot about you, heard a lot about you. One thing first I want to start with is the things that you've done in the community, the things that you've done for people. We're going to get into it. The audience is going to really see who you are, and you're famous. and you put your passion into what you do, and you help a lot of people, and you inspired a lot of people. First, I want to start off with Zaid Shakir, right?
Yes, sir.
No, where are you from? Are you from Connecticut?
Yeah, I'm from New Britain. We grew up in Pinnacle Heights.
New Britain, Connecticut.
Yeah.
Yes.
Son of Richeline Mitchell, formerly, before I became Muslim, Ricky Mitchell. My brother is Kenny Mitchell, Alan Mitchell, Jeffrey Mitchell, a few years under us.
Yes.
And then Melanie, Donna, Melanie, and Candy. So we grew up in Pinnacle Heights, Osgood Avenue. It was a healthy, wholesome childhood. Because before they built I-94, there was a bunch of woods back there. We go into the woods. We play sports, go to Osgood Park. They had a swimming pool. In fact, I went by there yesterday. They still have the shower house there, but I see they did away with the swimming pool.
Yeah.
But I mean, we would play football in the morning or baseball in the summertime till 1 o'clock. The pool opened at 1. Go swimming until 6. The pool closed at 6, then play basketball till they turn the lights out on the court. Then if it's getting good, the older guys bring their cars, turn on the headlight, be there till 12, 1 in the morning, get up at 5 in the morning, go pick tobacco in the tobacco field.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was live.
It was real. It was real.
Yeah.
It was different than how it is now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there is no now. They tore down Pinnacle Heights.
Yeah, it's gone.
But it was good though. I mean, and there's a lot of very talented people that came out of there.
Yes, I heard. And even though I'm from New Britain, I'm from Mount Pleasant, I'm starting now to get familiar with all the rich people who actually come out of New Britain. Like a lot of us don't know our history. We don't know that New Britain does have a lot of people who came out of it.
No, a lot. And even, I just learned fairly recently, a few years ago, Burritt Street, right? Burritt Street. You hear Burritt and Burritt Library, Burritt this and Burritt that. And just a few years ago, I learned that Elihu Burritt was one of the pioneers in the peace movement.
Wow.
So he was one of the early advocates of nonviolence. He inspired Tolstoy. Tolstoy inspired Gandhi. And Gandhi inspired Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So really, that whole trajectory that ends with Dr. King and his work and what he did for our people started right here in New Britain.
Wow.
He was Abraham Lincoln's ambassador to England. He did work in not an ambassador, governmental, but like a peace ambassador.
Yes.
And so right here, it started in New Britain.
You see that?
Yeah.
You see how like amazing that is?
Yeah.
Like, and we don't know that. Us growing up, we don't know. A lot of us suffer from feeling that we're not.
I definitely didn't know because it's not taught.
Yes.
It's not taught. There's a lot of stuff that's not taught. Why weren't we taught? So we hear these names, we go up and down Burritt Street, we go in and out of the Burritt Library or the Burritt this or that, but no one takes the time to say, hey, wait a minute, Dr. King was a recipient of the work that this man from New Britain, Connecticut did.
Deep.
Yeah.
That's deep right there. That's deep. Hit it on the nose. Now knowing that, right? Me being, 30 years old in my 30s, but knowing that, and now what we see now in our community is a reality. What would be the ingredient to actually say, okay, there's no way we can get that back. We can't get that back,
right,
but we can move forward and continue something better. What would be that first step, and what you think we would need to do?
I think what you're doing right here is one of the first steps, just talking about it. So we began to raise consciousness, talking about it and then broadcasting it.
Absolutely.
Because we could have this conversation, but it stays between us.
Yes.
But you're broadcasting it.
Yes.
So now a lot of people will hear that And so we start to revive that consciousness. In addition, I think it would be very healthy if we had like just some reunion type situations where we could bring some of these people back.
Wow, that's
and go right to Mount Pleasant Community Center,
Yep.
set something up, and just have an open conversation, have a festival. So it's not just all talk and lecture,
Yeah.
but you set up some basketball hoops and some bouncy houses for the kids. And while we're doing all that, we also have an opportunity to sit down with some of the young people and begin to talk about like how we were able to work our way through it and negotiate this system to make progress, and what they need to do and to start thinking about to just keep that progress going so that they don't fall victim. There's a lot of stuff out there intentionally put out there to trip people up.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are tripping up because of it.
Yeah. Wow. That's deep. And with and just going, forth with it. Would that be? Would you be interested in actually helping to in the future to put something together like that?
I have DMTS would sponsor something. I'll call everyone I know and can get in contact with and tell them, listen, we're going to do this. We're going to go back, talk to people, go to Mount Pleasant, go to Melikowski Circle, Corbin Heights,
everybody.
Set it up, go to New Britain High, bring everybody together, or even someplace maybe more central than New Britain High. And bring people together and sit down and interact and share.
That'd be awesome.
At many different levels.
That'd be awesome, because there's a lot of powerful people, there's a lot of strong people. I heard there's a lot of NBA coaches right now. Was Tom Thibodeau that's from New Britain that I didn't know until like a few months ago. Like all these people, they're from here.
And Tibucky Jones is back here.
He's back.
You get all these folks together. Byron Jones. And get the athletes, the entertainers, the educators, get everyone together and do something, big for the city. Especially for the young kids that are trying to figure it all out.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
I'm down.
And that's what's up. And I also I want to talk about because I know you did a lot of studying, and it led you to being a co-founder of a college, correct?
Right, that's right.
All right. You want to talk a little bit about that and how that came about?
Yeah, that came about, by it's an act of God ultimately. But no, I converted in 1977. Actually, I was in the Air Force at the time. And when I got out, even when I was in, just started studying the religion, because if you're converting, you're making a conscious decision. And so that has to be based on knowledge and research. Like, what am I getting into here? What's this all about? What are the teachings, etc.? So then when I got out of the Air Force, I continued to study. Eventually, I did my undergrad education at American University in Washington, D.C., and then I did my graduate degree at Rutgers in New Jersey, New Brunswick, New Jersey. And then at that point, I went overseas for 1 year to study Arabic, because I'm a Muslim and the Quran is Arabic, so I need to understand this book.
Definitely familiar with that.
But not through translation, because most translation is highly political. People will give you the slant in the translation according to their agenda and their ideology. So I wanted to be able to access it firsthand. So when I came back, we moved to New Haven, and we started a mosque there, Masjid al-Islam, which is still there on George Street, a little up the street from Yale University. We're very active in the community. At that point, we did anti-drug stuff. We did patrols in the housing projects there. We worked with the schools to work with programs for working mothers. So we have brothers going in teaching martial arts, teaching Arabic to kids in Helen Grant School in New Haven. And so we were doing different things there. And I was actually working, like I worked at Hamden Welfare Department. Once I graduated, and I worked at Yale, the co-op, Yale co-op. But I was also working with the masjid, so I became the imam or the leader of the masjid, the mosque. And so as my life started going towards working in that capacity, I said, I need to qualify myself because this is serious business. People's lives are at stake.
Absolutely.
So I made a decision to go to Syria. So I studied in Damascus for 6 years.
6 years, huh?
2 years in a language school and then 4 years at a college there. And I graduated from the college. It was an all-Arabic curriculum. When I finished that, I went back to New Haven for about a little less than 2 years. And then eventually this initiative in California was starting where they were working towards creating a Muslim college because there's none.
Yeah.
And a lot of kids, but not just a regular college, a religious college per se, but a liberal arts college where they could get their basic college education.
At the same time.
At the same time, learn about their religion, learn the Arabic language. And so we started working towards that, and in 2010, it came to fruition. So we opened our doors in 2010, and like I said, we combined those three elements, the Islamic studies, Western liberal arts, so philosophy, logic, history, the language arts, and the Arabic language. So it's a very rigorous curriculum. 2010 we started, 2015 we were accredited, and which is kind of miraculous, in 5 years we were fully accredited.
Yeah, a long journey, but a real rich and fun one, though. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I can see like the knowledge and the wisdom, in your face, the spirituality. I was like brought up as a Christian as well. I was brought up a Christian. I practice Islam. I got into a little bit. I read a lot, spirituality, a lot of stuff. So I understand almost all religions. One thing I want to ask you is, how do you get to a person that don't want to accept a religion, but you can have a conversation with that person and still guide that person in the right way? Because a lot of people are used to either Christians throwing their religion on them or Islam throwing it on them.
Right.
No one never gets the neutral, just the benefit of being a person or wisdom. How do you?
I think you do it. Like one of our teachers, when I was in Syria, his name was Sheikh Abdurrahman Shaguri. One of the students who was coming back to the West, either Canada, US, or Britain, one of the Western English-speaking countries. So he went to visit the Sheikh before he was coming back. So he said, I'm getting ready to go home, and when I get home, I'm going to go to the mosque. In the mosque, there's all types of Muslims. And I'm afraid if I go back there and I start calling them to this particular path, I'm just going to add to the confusion. And so the Sheikh, he said to him, well, you don't call people to the path with your words, you call them to the path with your state. And so I think it's important for us to recognize sometimes words in a religious context aren't necessary. And sometimes words can do more damage than good. There's a saying we have that the food for adults can be poison for babies. And so a lot of time people, like you're saying, they're not ready to receive this, but you're just unloading on them. It's like, bam, you hit them with everything. You want that first round Mike Tyson knockout. But sometimes you just have to nurture people, and like you said, nurture their humanity, and bring out the good qualities in them that might be crusted over, and help them to remove some of that crust. And then let them figure it out. They'll figure everyone is destined for a particular path. And they have to figure that out. No one can figure it out for them. No one can impose a path on anyone. And no one imposed it on me. I had to read books, like you said. I had to study. I had to figure it out for myself. And I think it's very important for us to just create the environment for people to figure it out. And it might not be my outcome, because I have my unique path. But God willing, it will be an outcome that's positive for them. And that will nurture them and get them into a space where we can recognize there are things we could do together. Even if we differ on certain particulars, there are universals that we agree on.
Absolutely.
And addressing those universals is more important than agreeing on the particulars. And oftentimes in the context of addressing the universals, we come to agree on the particulars.
Yeah. And for some people who believe or don't really understand the meaning of Islam or the teachings, to break it down to them in a couple words, how would you do that to someone?
Islam is simply submission to God. There's only one God. Like people say, oh, okay, yeah, you have your God, I have my God. No. There's one God who has us. We don't have God. God has us. And so I think it's very important. Islam, there's one God. All of the prophets and all of the messengers served that God. Moses, Abraham, Moses, Isaac, Jacob, Solomon, David, Jesus, and we believe Muhammad as Muslim all served that one God. And they all directed people to the reality of La ilaha illallah, there's no God but God. And so don't worship yourself. Some people worship themselves. And, you know, and they'll spend 5 minutes just to get that selfie because they worshiping their self, make sure it's just right. No, that one don't look, let me delete that. And so you don't worship yourself. You don't worship clothes, you don't worship money, you don't worship sex, you don't worship all the drugs, you know, that feeling that enslaves people. And once you're enslaved, that becomes your God. You don't worship any of that. You worship the creator of the heavens and the earth.
Absolutely.
Based on the guidance that was conveyed through the prophets. That's how you approach God. And so I think that's what Islam is in a nutshell.
That's there you go. Anybody that want to know what Islam is,
that's it.
That's it. They got it right there.
Yes, sir.
And that's amazing. And the other thing is, they consider you a scholar. A lot of people don't even know what that is. They don't know what that means. To get that title, it's almost like president in the Islamic point of view, because
but these days to mention president and scholar in the same voice is really a disservice to scholars.
Okay, let me not do that then.
We're in the era.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah, you can do that. I'm just teasing that.
But I know how important a scholar is. I studied Islam. When I say I studied Islam, I learned Arabic, everything. So a scholar, you don't get too many to. You have to put in your work. You have to put in your reading, your history, your study, your teachings, your wisdom. You know, you take care of your family. You looked upon as a respectable, smart, intelligent person. How does that make you feel?
I think it makes me feel indebted, number one, to a lot of people whose shoulders we stand on. Because no one gets anywhere of any import in life unless they're standing on the shoulders of giants.
Gotcha.
You know, not to be cliche-ish about it. Secondly, a sense of responsibility. Like you have a responsibility, and I think a lot of people are oblivious to that. So you can't do everything you want, how you want, when you want, because like you said, people are looking at you. And people are making judgments about the religion based on what you do. And we can see how distorting the actions of individuals can be in terms of how people perceive Islam. And so there's a tremendous responsibility in that regard to make sure you check yourself and check your behavior and check your words so that you're not misleading people and you're not misrepresenting God's religion as we understand it.
No, that's and one thing I would say about the different religions, because I take so much from a lot of religions, but and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but Islam, I believe, is the only religion that gives you details about things that they talk about. So when it talks about women, it gives you details on how to treat your woman. It gives you details on how to wash yourself, how to clean yourself, details on how to, like you said, present the religion to another person. I know when they talk about the Prophet Muhammad, how he led by example. All he did was be who he was, and people would see that and want to be that. So a lot of people don't understand that, like you said in the beginning, Islam doesn't shun other religions or disrespect other religions, because it's all the same prophets. It's
and
just
if we don't accept them, you're not a Muslim. If you don't accept Jesus, you're not a Muslim.
They don't
you don't
consider you a
accept
Muslim.
Moses, you're not a Muslim.
And
You
those
have to
prophets
accept
is in the
all
same
those
book.
prophets. Exactly. And so I think I think you really hit it on the head in terms of just the discipline
details and the discipline.
and the details. That's one thing that attracted me, because as I learned about the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his example, I said, man, I could wake up in the morning, and until I go to bed at night, I can walk in the footsteps. I can eat what he ate. I can read the scripture that was directly revealed to him. And when I turn in at night, I can say the prayer he said when he turned in at night. And so just that ability to just walk in prophetic footsteps was profound. And it was powerful. I said, man, this is awesome.
Yeah.
It was powerful. Like, bam.
It's deep.
It was really deep. And then as you begin to do that, you understand that you're cultivating a strong connection with your Lord. And it's easier said than done. Like a lot of people, they talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk.
They don't walk the walk. Yeah.
And that causes problems.
A lot of problems.
Absolutely.
A lot of problems. One thing I also want to touch on is in our world today, there's a lot of young kids, and they're looking at all of us. They're looking at social media, they're looking at us, looking at the world, and they kind of want to know what's really going on. We're affected by real issues, real problems. A lot of violence, racism, everything exists in this world, right? What do you think, or what do you believe that we as people, leaders, there's a lot of leaders around here, that we have to come on common grounds with in order to start to change the perception of some of these nasty, how people look at Muslims, how people look at black people, how people look at, Jewish, Christians, president all over the world. What is it that we have to come on common ground with? It's something that has to bring us together. One thing should be able to, even if we disagreed in 50 things, there's one thing, like family. Like if somebody asks you, what's the most important thing? Family. Right. Everybody loves their family.
We just had our family reunion this past weekend.
You see what I mean?
It was beautiful and powerful. And what my brother said, because he gave a Sunday sermon, that's part of the tradition. I actually gave it one year. But he mentioned how could a family that has committed Muslims, committed Jehovah's Witnesses, committed Christians, Baptists, come together in peace, love, and harmony, because we understand family is so important. We have to rise above the potential divisions. And so I think leaders have to understand family is so important, and these kids that are out there in the streets shooting at each other or whatever they're doing, they are part of our extended family. And we have an obligation to them, and that obligation to them should allow us to rise above whatever differences we might have at one level, to say, okay, we could sort that out later, but right now we have to do something for these young people. We have to do something, because people did stuff for us. We could remember our mentors. We could remember the people who gave us that nudge. Nah, don't go over there. Just get back over there. Get back over there. Kept us on the path.
Straight path.
And so we have to begin to do that for the young people. And in whatever capacity. A lot of times, I think also, it doesn't have to necessarily be something heroic. something big and audacious. My nephew is a youth football coach.
Yeah.
And it involves sacrifice. You know, his family, his immediate family, sometimes they're neglected to a certain extent. Not totally, or the family would have dissolved, but because he's going to New Britain and picking up a bunch of guys and bringing them to Hartford to practice and bringing them back home. You know, and he's doing that when the season's in several times a week.
Yeah.
That's a sacrifice.
Absolutely.
But it's not something necessarily heroic in the sense you're not going to see it on the front page of the New Britain Herald, if they still have the New Britain Herald.
They do.
You're not going to see it on the nightly news.
No.
But it's a sacrifice that he's making that's making a difference in the lives of a lot of young people.
Correct.
And so I think wherever we can make a difference, we have to begin to make the time, the effort, expend the energy, sacrifice the money, because he's going out of pocket for the gas to do all that running around and picking up and dropping out. So to make those sacrifices, and then they start to add up. At another level, we have to begin to strategize, and in terms of how can we translate our political potential into political power. Because like you said, you got some nasty people, they're making nasty decisions that are affecting the lives of young people and old people for that matter. You know, they could find billions of dollars to go bomb people all over the world, but they can't find a few $1 million for WIC or food stamps, and then insulting and denigrating people who have legitimate needs.
Yes.
Not because they're a welfare queen or someone who wants to deal with that indignity, but they have legitimate needs. And so, those decisions are made because a lot of times those who are making those decisions realize there aren't any political consequences or economic consequences. But when we sit down and step back and we start strategizing, we can say, listen, we could organize ourselves in the primary. We won't be able to defeat this candidate that's been making all of these policies that are defunding our schools, that are ending programs that are providing a safety net for a lot of people in the open election, but we could get them in the primary. Where only a few thousand people are turning out. And so if we register our people and then we enter that primary, we could get rid of this guy. You know, economic, we start boycotting stuff. And strategically and selectively, we could begin to organize strategies that will let these people know who are making these decisions, there's going to be political and economic consequences. That's the only thing they respect. So you could go ahead and push that policy, but you're going to have a short political career. And we're going to make sure of that. But to do that, we have to come together. We have to have the critical mass to be able to organize our collective constituents to be able to enter the arena at those levels to make a difference.
That's real powerful. That's real important. And I also think it's those words that we're talking about right now, the things that you just said, if we look back, it's been said before. You know, we have to come together, we have to wake up, we have to get, you know, political power correct. We have to stand together and, you know, and be real about it. But I want to ask you this because it's important. We were affected years ago that lingers with us to this day, that has us in this sense of coming together. And I'm gonna take it all the way back to slavery, right? There was a mental disease that was planted in our minds in slavery, where a lot of us is affected today.
Absolutely. Post-traumatic slave syndrome.
Okay, now so I want to ask you.
Epigenetics. It's real.
That's real.
It's coded in the DNA.
I want you to touch on that. It could go out
5 or 6 generations.
Explain that. Touch on that, because that's a real thing that a lot of people don't know.
We internalize trauma, and that affects the genetic structure. It affects us at a genetic level. And so that trauma can be internalized, and then the concept. So epigenetics is real in terms of internalizing trauma at a DNA level, and then passing that trauma down to others. Then there's the behavioral aspect, because a good example that Dr. Joy DeGruy makes in her book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, or when she talks about it, is you have an African-American mother at the PTA meeting, and she's praising the Caucasian mother's child, like, oh, that's John, Tony's always talking about John, and he seems to be the brightest student in the class. And then the Caucasian mother says to the African-American mother, but no, little Tony, John said, he's really the smartest kid in the class, and like he just makes them look like a bunch of dummies, and you should be so proud of that. Oh, that boy, you don't know Tony. He's not as smart as he looks, and so she starts putting them down. But that's an inherited behavior.
Yes, it is.
Because in slavery, if that child was distinguished in any way, his value goes up. He's going to get sold off from his mother.
From his family.
Exactly. And so that putting down and denigrating is a defense mechanism to protect the child. But now in this new environment, it becomes a source of stifling that child's potential.
Wow.
But the behavior was carried down. And so there are a lot of things subtle and some not so subtle.
That's deep. Well, hold on. What you said, don't go too fast, because people got to understand how deep that is. Because they wouldn't even understand that even the lady that's doing it wouldn't even understand what she's doing.
Exactly.
It's a disease, you know. That's scary though.
Yeah. But it's not a disease per se. It's something healthy per se, in that it's an inherited defense mechanism.
Okay, got you.
But in this environment, it becomes detrimental to that child's development. But in the environment of slavery, it was positive, because that old dumb boy, he ain't worth nothing. She like, thank God. Because now he don't want to sell him, because he thinks, but he's intelligent, he's smart, he's athletic, he's strong.
Now she loses him.
She loses him.
That's serious. That's deep.
And so now she loses him in a different kind of way, because that emotional connection between the mother and the child is eroded, because I'm doing good in school and mom always putting me down, and even John's mother know I'm the smartest kid in the class, and she's still calling me dumb and stupid. And so there's a lot going on that a lot of times we don't think about. And so we need to step back and think about these things, talk about them, and then begin to transcend them, to understand that no, it's all right for you to build this child up, because now in this environment where he's got to compete, and a lot of that competition is intellectual these days, and he has a brain that's just as vibrant, just as intelligent as anyone else out there, and so now he has to be encouraged to go out there and compete.
That's serious. And just on that topic, we probably have about hundreds of topics. Like, if we took it to the woman and the man. I'm not even going to say too much. I'm just going to give you that. Woman and the man in slavery. Break that down to us. What do we suffer from with that concept?
You see the difficulty in keeping our families together. You know, there's a recent book that came out about the slave breeding industry. And so you had people put into relationships just to breed, like you breed in horses. Like we got secretariats, genes in this horse, and we got whoever, a female horse here, and we're going to bring them together to make a super horse. And so in Virginia and the Louisiana Delta, you had plantations that just were breeding slaves. And then elsewhere also. And so this whole idea of just the physical act of procreation is the only thing, in some instances, the male-female relationship was confined to. And so that's also something that's been handed down. But with that said, though, that's a minority. A lot of people are doing everything to form families and to keep those families together. And a lot of men were doing everything under very dehumanizing circumstances and situations to take care of their families and to keep their families together. And so that fight and that struggle has also been handed down. And I think a lot of factors have led us where we are today that have absolutely nothing to do with slavery. So you have slavery and the difficulty of forming and maintaining family, children sold off, wives sold off, husband sold off, and a lot of the other more malicious things that were done to undermine the confidence of the man in terms of being the head of the family. His wife being raped by a slave master in front of his eyes.
He can't do nothing.
And it's going to be his life.
Right, yeah.
And so all of these things combined, despite all of that, you had really heroic and valiant efforts to maintain the family. But then you have stuff like Vietnam, right? And a whole generation of young people going over there and either coming back alcoholic or drug addict, severely injured or dead.
Yes, yes.
And look at the impact of that on the family. Before Vietnam, 1960, 80% of all African American households are male-headed. Might not necessarily be married, most were, but were male-headed homes. You fast forward 20 years, 70% of African American homes are female-headed. What happened in between? Vietnam happened in between. And so that social devastation and the drugs and that were pumped into the community happened in between. You know, Superfly and Mac Daddy and all of that, black exploitation happened in between. And so a lot of those values that were there in 1960, even in the North, urban ghettos, so-called environments, have been destroyed. Yes. And a lot of it as a conscious act. And then you end up with what we have right now.
What we have now. Dangerous.
Because once that male leadership is taken from the home and the community, like when we were growing up, we couldn't stand on the corner and sell drugs. People want to buy something, they got to go in the back and down the stairs, and it was hidden. Because someone would snatch you. An older man would snatch, like, ain't you so-and-so? What you doing out here, boy? You know, I'm going to beat you and whoop you right now. Then I'm going to send you home, and your mama going to whoop you, and then whenever your father come on, he going to whoop. You couldn't do that.
It's different.
It was totally different because you had male leadership in the community. Once you take that factor out, and then it's just a free-for-all.
Whatever you want.
Do what you want to do, and no one's there to check you. And it's not necessarily just the physical checking. A lot of times it's just there's a chain of respect that is in place. And out of respect for those elders, you tamped it down, and you checked yourself, and you restrained yourself. And so you take that away, and it helps to contribute. There are a lot of other factors, but it helps to contribute to the situation that we see today.
Wow. And then it leads us to our young kids in this prison system.
Another conscious political decision. You know, a lot of it goes back to the Clintons, and it goes back to Reagan, the war on drugs, and the Clintons, the war on crime, and just a society making a lot of decisions that we're going to profit off of the exploitation of certain communities. And because we're going to profit, we're going to ensure that based on your zip code, we can determine if this child will end up when they're 20 years old in a university or college classroom or in a prison. And so those are conscious policies. And the ability to challenge it. I think Michelle Alexander lays it out in The New Jim Crow, how you can't even bring a class action discrimination suit because the judicial system has set things in place where unless you can show in this individual instance of discrimination, that individual cop or that individual judge was motivated by racial prejudice, you don't have a case.
Yeah, yeah.
Despite, New York City stop and frisk, 900,000 stop and frisk, and like 800,000 are black and Latino. But unless you can show any one instance of a stop and a frisk was an instance of racial discrimination, you don't have a case, despite those statistics.
No matter what.
And that's policy, that's judicial rulings. And that's why now, what is Trump doing? Stacking the courts. Like, we get distracted by all the nonsense about the Stormy Daniels and about the Putin and about the this and the that. Beneath all that static, there's very systematic work being put in place to preserve the reality of white supremacy in this society.
Yeah.
And stacking the court with conservative, in many instances, racist judges.
Yes.
And at federal courts, appellate courts, appeal courts, and the consequences are gerrymandering districts, which now the Supreme Court has defended. Voter suppression, Supreme Court has defended, and that's before we get a new judge on there. That's even more likely to defend those policies. So I think it's very important for us to realize that a lot of systematic moves are being made to ensure that a lot of our disproportionate number of our young people end up in prison, that a disproportionate number of our young people end up without college educations. And we have to begin to push back at many different levels, but one level is just at the grassroots level to make sure in our individual spheres of influence that we're doing everything in our power to ensure that that outcome isn't the outcome that our young people within our realm
yes,
have to deal with.
Absolutely.
And then it links up. Like, I was in Vancouver, Canada several years ago, right at the beginning of the rainy season. And then the rain becomes the snow up in the mountains. And we were on the banks of this river. It wasn't a very big river, maybe as wide as half of this studio. But the volume of water and the strength of the current was powerful. You're like, man, if I fell in there, I'm done. I'm gonna get smashed on these rocks, swept downstream. It was roaring, powerful. Then I thought, and I said, this mighty river, somewhere way up in the mountains, those mountains, started with a single drop of rain.
Absolutely.
And then that one joined with others, and they joined, and they made little streams, and they came together. And the end result was this powerful river. And so I think it's important for us to never underestimate the impact of what we might do. Like, you're doing something in your realm, I'm doing it in my realm, the next brother, the next sister, and eventually they start coming together. They start overlapping. And you end up with that powerful river that can make a big difference in a lot of people's lives.
That's powerful. And I think that brings us to how important Muhammad Ali was, and you having the honor to, hold his funeral. But he standed on something.
Absolutely.
And he was a big influence to the world. And he was a boxer. You don't get a lot of boxers who people can say, listen, he wasn't just a boxer, he was everything, What advice would you give to people right now that's listening, women, men, children, world? What can you leave with them that will take them to that next step in life?
I think since you introduced this question by referencing Muhammad Ali, I think we could take something from his life. So Ali always believed that he was destined to do something great. He always believed that. He always believed from the time he was a child that he was going to do something great. And boxing wasn't the end game. Boxing, he planned to use the popularity that boxing gave him to make introduce social and spiritual change in the lives of masses of people. He wanted to be a Muslim Billy Graham, and he actually had started training for it. And then, his voice was taken from him, but he believed he was destined to do something great. So the advice I would have to anyone listening to this conversation is believe that you can do something great, and never accept what the world has assigned you. So the world might assign you to failing school, the world might assign you to very difficult circumstances in your neighborhood. It's very easy to get caught up in gang or this or that, but understand that what the world has assigned to you is secondary to what you assign to yourself. And if you believe in yourself, and you believe that there's something great in your future, nothing can stop you. Nothing. If you believe in yourself and you believe there's greatness in your future, and I seriously believe there's greatness in the future of every single individual out there.
Yeah, I agree.
And if you believe that, and then it's nurtured, that nothing can stop you.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing.